All right, so move on to the next segment. We're going to pivot over here to the world of boxing, and I'll be sharing my fight prediction for this weekend's fight taking place in the sport of boxing between Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney. So this is a highly anticipated fight where we will see Brian Norman Jr. defend his WBO welterweight championship against Devin Haney in the co-main event slot of the Riyadh, Saudi Arabia Night of Champions card. So these are the following storylines that I have heading into this highly anticipated welterweight championship fight. Storyline number one is, can Brian Norman Jr. swim with the big sharks in the sport of boxing? Now, Brian Norman Jr. is a world champion to his credit, but we have yet to see him fight an elite fighter at this welterweight division. As we know the story of how the belts have been scattered around from 2023 up to this particular point. Terrence Crawford was undisputed at this division back in the summer 2023 when he defeated Earl Spence. Short story, all the titles got scattered around. Brian Norman Jr. collected the vacant WBO title, became the WBO champion, has never looked back since. And this is his first big test. I mean, I think right now, if you look at the current champions and the cream of the crop of this division after Jaron Ennis has moved out of the welterweight division, I think Brian Norman Jr. has to be labelized as the best fighter at the welterweight division right now. He has the power, he has the skills, he has the charisma to be the next big star in the sport of boxing. But this weekend against Devin Haney, it's time to put it all together. Win or lose, I want to see what type of outing we get out of Brian Norman Jr. And I want to see if he can deliver in the biggest fight of his boxing career, his biggest world title defense, and his biggest fight up to date in his young boxing career, getting in the ring against Devin Haney, a former two-division world champion. So we're going to see a lot out of Brian Norman Jr. We're going to get a lot out of him, and a lot is going to be said about Brian Norman Jr. But it starts this weekend. Can he swim with the big sharks in the ocean against Devin Haney in this loaded welterweight division? As for Devin Haney, will we see the Devin Haney of old? And what I mean by the Devin Haney of old is, we know how good Devin Haney is. Whether you like him, you hate him, you dislike him, whatever. You got to give Devin Haney his credit. He is one hell of a fighter. He is one hell of a boxer. True talent. He dares himself to be great. He wants to get in there with the best of the best. He's a former two-division world champion, former undisputed champion at the lightweight division at 135, former world champion at 140 with the WBC title. But that's the old Devin Haney. The newer Devin Haney, from what we've seen out of Devin Haney out of his last two fights for the last 2 years, has not been good in impressive outings. You look at what happened to Devin Haney in the spring of 2024 against Ryan Garcia. Yes, Ryan Garcia tested positive for PEDs, but I don't give a damn. If you're a pound-for-pound fighter, you have the ability to block a check left hook, dribbling your head off the canvas over and over and over again. Ryan Garcia dropped him with the same shot 3 to 4 times in that fight. And yeah, it got declared a no contest because Ryan Garcia tested positive for 2 PEDs. But after that, once Devin Haney got in the ring 12, 13 months later against Jose Ramirez, that was not the same Devin Haney of old that we've seen him beat Vasily Lomachenko, Regis Prograis, George Kambosos, and several others. That was not the Devin Haney of old. And he ran around the boxing ring in that fight against Jose Ramirez, only landing 70 punches in that fight. And to be honest with you guys, when I watched that fight back in May, I honestly fell asleep watching that Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez fight because of how boring it was, and I couldn't believe the type of offensive style that Devin Haney was giving us that night in the sport of boxing. So I want to see if the Devin Haney of old can come back, because if not, he could be in principles off his trouble against Brian Norman Jr. in the co-main event of this Night of Champions card. But enough of the storylines. Let's get into the tail of the tape here. Tail of the tape for the fight, starting off with the challenger, Devin Haney. Devin Haney is 32-0 in his boxing career. 15 victories come away of knockout. Former two-division world champion in his boxing career. Stands at 5'9" with a reach of 71 inches. Then I'm looking at the champion, Brian Norman Jr. Brian Norman Jr. has 28 victories by way of knockout. 22 victories coming way of knockout. He's currently the reigning defending WBO welterweight champion. Stands at 5'8" with a reach of 72 inches. So the height goes in favor of Devin, but the reach goes in favor of Brian Norman Jr. And this highly anticipated fight where someone's O has got to go for the WBO welterweight championship. So these are the following game plans that I think these respective boxers should follow if they want to walk out with that coveted WBO welterweight championship. Starting off with the challenger, Devin Haney. Devin Haney has to be alert defensively, guys, because if he's not alert defensively, look out. And he could be in principal's office trouble as the fight goes on. I think Devin Haney's got to move around, be alert defensively, move around in different lateral movements, which he has the footwork to do. He has polished footwork. We've seen in the past that Devin Haney does fight in different lateral movements to trick his opponents to set up traps. I think he should do that against Brian Norman Jr. Quick head movement. Your head has to be on a swivel against Brian Norman Jr. because if not, you could land into a world of trouble. Avoid the huge power shots that Brian Norman Jr. is going to throw at you because he has a 79% knockout percentage and poises something that was his kryptonite back in the spring of 2024, a signature check left hook that Ryan Garcia has. Now, I don't think Brian Norman Jr. realistically has the hand speed of Ryan Garcia. I think he's a tad bit slower, but it don't matter the hand speed. If you can't defend that, and that's coming at you with other power shots that Brian Norman Jr. could throw at you, you are in a world of trouble. So I think Devin Haney has to be alert defensively in all the categories and everything that I just mentioned. Next, Devin Haney's got to use his jab to his advantage. And honestly, when you talk about Devin Haney's offensive game, I think he has one of the best jabs that the sport has seen in the recent time in the sport of boxing, in this era of boxing. I mean, I can line Devin Haney up with having one of the best jabs in the business with Shakur Stevenson, Dimitri Bivol, Terrence Crawford. The list goes on and on. Devin Haney has one of the best jabs in the sport. And I think if he have that quick jab to keep Brian Norman Jr. off of him, and that jab can honestly lead to Devin Haney generating offense and freezing out Brian Norman Jr., who will be coming to fight in the inside a lot. So if Brian Norman Jr. is coming in the inside and Devin Haney hits him with that straight jab that packs a punch, even though Devin Haney isn't known for knockout power, he touches up his opponents a lot. Look at his opponents' faces after fights. And if he could depend on the jab to keep Brian Norman Jr. out of range offensively, freeze him offensively as they'll try to come to fight in the inside, and then begin to mix in the counter shots, this could be a clear advantage that Devin Haney has over Brian Norman Jr. as the fight goes on offensively. And last but not least, outbox Brian Norman Jr. Now, honestly, when you think about it, I broke this down a few months ago, or who had the advantage and disadvantages in this fight. But realistically, Devin Haney is the more polished fighter and does have more advantages than disadvantages compared to Brian Norman Jr. The only disadvantage I would say he has against Brian Norman Jr. would obviously be the power department. But other than that, Devin Haney has all the advantages against Brian Norman Jr. here in this fight. And I think he should fight on the outside and outbox Brian Norman Jr. Because if he can fight on the outside, off the back foot, that we've seen Devin Haney fight off the back foot several times in his boxing career, forcing Brian Norman Jr. to reset and frustrate him. Every time that Brian Norman Jr. could possibly miss a punch, he could make Brian Norman Jr. pay for it by the mistakes, by the traps, and capitalize on the mistakes that Brian Norman Jr. could have for Devin Haney. He has that check hook shot that Devin Haney likes to land. He should land that against Brian Norman Jr. and land the counter right shot against Brian Norman Jr. to outbox him to victory. And boxing off the back foot, he could find a lot of advantages in that department against Brian Norman Jr. trying to outbox him. So those are game plans for Devin Haney. As for Brian Norman Jr., I think Brian Norman Jr. should apply the pressure. Walk down Devin Haney. That's his bread and butter. Always walking down his opponents. And Devin Haney, like I just said, does rely a lot to box off the back foot. Could it be a good thing in this fight? Time will tell Saturday. But I think if he is going to depend on boxing off the back foot a lot, Brian Norman Jr. should walk him down, smother him, cut the ring off. And Brian Norman Jr. is definitely going to be looking to do this against Devin Haney. And if he could cut the ring off, fight coming forward, get a flow going, and get going in an offensive rhythm, and he could press Devin Haney up on the ropes. And if he presses Devin Haney up on the ropes and Devin Haney believes he could be Muhammad Ali on the ropes, Brian Norman Jr. is going to lay the pressure and the smackdown on him with the power shots connecting upstairs, downstairs to the body. He's going to be looking to hurt Devin Haney. So I think this could be a good game plan for him, and keep touching him up as the fight goes on. You might not land the clear shot that you want, but as long as you apply the pressure, get going offensively, touch up Devin Haney, eventually you could break down his will if you're Brian Norman Jr. Next, I think Brian Norman Jr. should take advantage of Devin Haney's defense. I don't think Devin Haney has the best defense in the sport of boxing. I think he's pretty decent, pretty good, but he's not known for his defense. So he's not the best defensive fighter, and I think he should take advantage of fighting Devin Haney in the inside. And I think if he could fight Devin Haney in the inside, trap him fighting in the inside, if Devin Haney tries to make this a phone booth fight as I get tongue-tied, he's going to be in a world of trouble. I think if Brian Norman Jr. is going to win this fight, he should try to fight Devin Haney in the inside. Fight him in the inside, landing the power shots, landing the signature check left hook that gave Devin Haney problems when that Ryan Garcia gave Devin Haney problems when they fought each other in the spring of 2024. And he failed to defend that signature check left hook several times in that fight. So I think Brian Norman Jr. should do that. And last but not least, I think Brian Norman Jr. should stay calm under pressure. He's been in world championship fights, yes, but never fought an elite fighter like Devin Haney. This is the biggest opponent of his boxing career. Never face an opponent like this. Mistakes are going to happen in a 12-round championship fight because you're fighting one of the best fighters that the sport has seen in a long time. So mistakes are going to happen. Trust your corner. Not lose focus. You could fall behind on the judges' scorecards by a round or so, but it's not the end of the world. If he can stay calm, cool, and collected and follow the things that I just mentioned, he could be in store to successfully retain his WBO welterweight championship against Devin Haney. But this is close, guys. With that being said, I'm going to go with Brian Norman Jr. to defeat Devin Haney by knockout to successfully retain his WBO welterweight championship. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this could be a compelling fight. If both guys are bringing their best A games, we got one hell of a fight that could be in store for being Fight of the Year in 2025. I'm going with Brian Norman Jr. here because I don't know if we're going to see the Devin Haney of old. And I've said on this podcast, on this platform in the past, that Devin Haney does not do good against fighters that are stronger than him, faster than him, and possess dangerous knockout power. If you look at Devin Haney's best wins, they possibly have been tailor-made for him. I hate to say it. Look at the age gap against himself and Vasily Lomachenko. Look at the age gap between himself and Regis Prograis. Look at the 5-year age gap between himself and George Kambosos. All of those fighters were tailor-made for Devin Haney to defeat those guys. But PEDs or not, when we seen someone in the ring with him faster, stronger, and quicker than him, he failed to defend a check left hook that was thrown at him the entire fight that dropped him to the canvas 3 to 4 times. But as I digress, we're here now for Brian Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney. Overall, I think Brian Norman Jr. is going to figure out Devin Haney as the fight goes on. I think the Devin Haney of old is not going to be equipped to handle, or the new Devin Haney, I should say, is not going to be equipped to handle Brian Norman Jr. I think Brian Norman Jr. is going to set the tempo, walking down Devin Haney, forcing Devin Haney to box off his back foot. I think Brian Norman Jr. is going to establish the power. He's going to win the counter-punching battle. I think that signature check left hook that Brian Norman Jr. possesses is going to give Devin Haney a lot of problems. And I think as the fight goes on, Brian Norman Jr. is going to break down Devin Haney's will. And I think he's going to land a late-round knockout to successfully retain his WBO title against Devin Haney. But that is my fight prediction for this weekend's fight between Brian Norman Jr. and Devin the Dream Haney.